Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Robin Ewing, and with Professor Michael Anderson, I co-direct the Create Centre. And before I introduce our wonderful speaker for this evening, I want to acknowledge our First Nations Australians and acknowledge that they are the oldest continuous culture in the world and have lived their lives through story and the arts. And we have so much to learn from the way that they have done that in their doing, knowing, being, and becoming. I'm on Darug country tonight. The University of Sydney is on Gadigal land. You might like to acknowledge the country that you're joining on from in the chat. The Create Centre is about transforming our lives through creativity and the arts. And tonight, we're going to hear from Dr. Olivia Karolis. And I think it's a wonderful topic for tonight. It's about choosing joy, and particularly the project that Olivia has been working on in early childhood contexts. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce Olivia.
Oh, Robin, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. Hello, everybody. I would like to start. My aim for this evening is that you will walk away feeling more joyful, and that in your practice tomorrow, there will be something that you'll be able to bring with you to carry some of the joyful work that we've been doing. I'd like to, I'm going to share my screen with you, but as I'm doing that, can I ask you to please pop in the chat as well as which country you are on? How you feeling? Just a word and just how you feeling right now.
Joyful from a cold morning in Denmark. And Ulla, I did notice your wonderful jumper, which is making me feel better in this terrible heat. I've got expectant and excited but flustered and hungry and content.
Wow, there's lots of words. So just we'll hold those and we'll talk about them again at the end of our meeting tonight. This project is one that I share with my wonderful colleague who it would have been lovely if I should have actually asked her to come tonight. Associate Professor Kathy Little. She and this research is one that we very much share. And together we many years ago we were talking about early childhood and about the profession. I remember Kathy looking at me saying, "What about the joy?" And it was that started this research. What about the joy? Because it's there. And so we began with a project starting to understand how early childhood educators perceived and experienced joy in early childhood settings. And we began with a survey, a very simple survey. And what we discovered was yes, they did see joy, they did feel joy. It was very much a part of their work, but there were so many barriers to their joy. We also found that joy was contagious. When we talked about joy with young children, with educators present, when we talked with other researchers, when we did a roundtable presentation, it was one of the most joyful experiences that I've ever had. And I had shared that with Kathy. So the research about joy is very much one that we are doing together. The approaches and practices that I'm talking about tonight are ones that you can take with you to all of your settings, be it teaching in higher education, be it in a primary school setting, if you're working for a nonprofit, if you're working in an early childhood, absolutely. These are all practices that you can take to start choosing joy. And I use that word, choose joy, because one of the research participants in our study, one of the educators, said to me, joy is a choice. You can choose joy. And I'm beginning to see from this research that yes, you can. What you're seeing in front of you is a puppet called Joy. And she taught us a lot, particularly about how children experience joy. When we were working with ethics, one of the pieces of feedback we got from the ethics was, would children know what joy meant? Shouldn't you say happy? Shouldn't you use a different word? The joy doesn't seem to be something young children would understand. Well, surprise, surprise, they do understand what joy means. And when we've spoken with children in morning circle and circle time and asked them, we've used a puppet for them to tell the child how they experience joy. You know, what does joy mean for you? And children said some of the most beautiful things. Joy was their mummy, their daddy, their friend, their sister. When their daddy's been away and he comes back. So there was so much in the children's responses that demonstrated how much they understood that joy was relational and that joy wasn't just a feeling, it was something that's connected for other people and with other people. I think that's a big part of what we're going to, what I'm going to share with you tonight. Lots of dogs barking because there's joy with the rest of the family coming home. It's to understand that joy isn't just a feeling, it's something that's generated through our relationships with other people. And we had a meeting today, a staff meeting at Sydney Uni, and we talked about who we are. And I think we are joyful educators. And I think we're educators that work through relationships with other people. And this research very much supports that finding. So this is just a play around, but it's welcome to the joy division. These different things we can take into our practice to share joy. So when I'm talking about joy, I'm not just talking about feeling happy or yes, go team. It's about that depth and that deep feeling that comes of our relationships with other people. How we have started this research when we have moved away from the surveys and now going in and trialing these different approaches, many of them creative, with educators, is making sure that everyone is in a place to attend to joy and really having a shared understanding of what joy is. So I'm going to ask everybody to please, I'll give you 5 minutes to write a very short letter to yourself from a child. So imagine that it's 100 years from now or 50 years from now, and there is a child that is writing to you. So don't overthink it. A child, a student, a young person that is writing to you to thank you for something of joy, a moment of joy that you brought to them. So put yourself in that child's shoes or perspective and write a very short letter to you from that child. Somebody who feels comfortable either telling us as a group, reading their letter to us, or popping it in chat. Just 1 or 2 people who would feel, and you don't have to. It's totally fine.
I will.
I love you, Tash.
Dear Miss Beaumont, thank you for being so fun and happy in class and teaching me about drama. I love it.
Anyone else? Because I reckon we're going to see a pattern, just like we did in the early childhood programs that I'm working on. May I ask someone else?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you.
I wrote, Dear Georgia, thank you. I love when we sing the spider song and when you tip the big tub of blue water into the bubble tub. It was a big gush of water that spilled onto the rocks.
What you just wrote then, Georgia, is so like much of the letters that we have found when we're working with educators and their early childhood educators. But Tash, you're not. So these are primary school. It's the little things. Joy is not, I loved that amazing lesson that you designed for us, or that you built this incredible pretend play area. I mean, that would be fantastic, but it's those little things. It's that you always read the big picture books to me, that you sing the same song 1,000 times over at morning circle. It's those small moments that as educators and teachers we do with children and for children that they know matter, that they know we know matter to them, and that we do
a
it.
couple in the chat too, if you.
Oh, cool. I will.
Would you like me to read them out, or?
I'd love you to, because it's clunky moving.
I've got one from Ulla saying, thank you, Mother of Play Art, for bringing joy, play, and curiosity into my kindergarten. And I've got one from Amanda, your Amanda, saying, Dear Amanda, I remember the time when we were singing the silly version of Open Shut Them, and I made up new words for everyone to sing. And I remember when we wrote the whale song, and I made up the line about the pirate ship. That was great.
So there is it. Thank you so much for sharing all those moments of joy. And I think what's important is for us to hold on to that. It's those small moments. It's those moments that we have with children, but also with one another, that we share them with educators. And in that respect, joy becomes contagious. This isn't about trying to solve, and our research isn't about trying to solve the many issues that are affecting teachers at the moment. It is about how to refocus and attend to the other parts of our work that sustain us and create learning environments that are positive and joyful. And so that letter of joy is one that we've started doing at the beginning of the research, because it's one that sets the tone for what joy is, what we're looking for. Not great moments of happiness and excitement, but those moments of small moments, those interactions, those things that we do with children and young people every day, all day, and what that means to a child as they're forming their identity, that rubs off on us, and that we recognize it, that it sticks, because our learning is social. So when you are bringing joy to someone else, it gives back. It starts to shift how you think about yourself as a teacher. And so that's sort of how we then set the tone for the next research activities, which is about engaging in joyful conversations. Once everyone's had that feeling of that's the joy with children, it's how do we then start creating opportunities for more of those conversations to take place in early childhood settings. But this could also happen in a primary school, in a secondary school, in a creative arts program, in an out of school, after school care, many, many contexts. So it's starting to come up with simple prompts that we ask educators to ask one another morning tea, during break, when they catch one another in the hallway, and to start seeing in each other when they have noticed joy. So, for example, if I was with Tash today, and there were so many moments I noticed joy in Tash when she was pretending to be a 12-year-old student in a conversation we were having, and her hands were up. That there was these moments of joy, and it's being able to look at your colleague, look at another educator, look at someone that you're co-teaching with or working with, and saying, hey, did you see the joy? Did you notice the joy that you brought with that child today? So it's those kinds of questions, and making sure that educators have the time to acknowledge that. So one way we did that was by having what we called a tree of joy that was in the hall. So it was in one of the hallways, there was this tree, and we could put Post-it notes. I noticed the joy you had when you had your hot chocolate this morning. I noticed the joy you had when, let's say the child's name was Roger, it wasn't, left his mum today and came inside without crying, holding your hand. Do you know? It's those different moments. I noticed the joy when you were singing. I noticed the joy when you were sharing the birthday cake with the children today. So we're starting to put these pictures of joy to almost act as a provocation or a stimulus or a trigger or whatever you want, to just keep us looking at all the joy that's happening around the place. And we're putting it up visually. It also became a place for other joyful conversations, because when parents are dropping their children off or picking their children up, educators could go, oh, did you see Sammy doing this today? And the teacher go, what was happening in that picture? So this suddenly becomes a lovely place for natural, joyful conversations to start from, this starting place, rather than, oh, tell me about how was the day? It was good. We had a good day. You know, sometimes educators are really tired when it's pick-up time, or children are really upset in the morning, or mum's really rushed, or dad's really rushed. There's this picture here to remind us of the conversations that we want to have and the joyful moments that we want to share. So it served two purposes in the end, the second one being one that I had not anticipated or expected.
Olivia, I was just wondering, did you work with the whole centre?
In one program, I've worked with the early childhood and the infant room. So there was one group, there was 3 classes in the centre, and we worked with 2 of them, just for staffing. There just wasn't. One other room had so many casual staff that it just didn't feel as though that was going to be something that the centre director felt the staff would want to do. So it was just in 2 out of 3 rooms. And then the program that I'm in at the moment, that we've started beginning our research, it's just in one of the rooms, with the potential, again, to go to the other 3 rooms. Just it depends so much on how stable the staffing is.
Sure, yeah, that's beautiful, yeah. Thanks.
So, but the thing is that what was nice was that some of the teachers who were working in the other rooms started including the casual staff from the other room in the Tree of Joy. So the Tree of Joy was open to the whole school, to the whole centre. So everybody was involved in that. And everybody overall in that program noticed that they were more aware of each other and of parents, their gratitude and their joyful moments. They're far more aware of it after the research period than they were when they began. They just hadn't seen it for all the reasons that research tells us. They're overworked, they're tired, they're exhausted. They don't feel as though early childhood educators, from the research that we have, don't necessarily feel as though they're valued. So it's important that we all start putting in place opportunities for the incredible work they do to be acknowledged. So that moves us on to pictures of joy, which was another piece of evidence or research data that we were taking, where we have teachers use images of children in joyful moment, using pictures of joy to begin the planning cycle. So rather than working with the planning cycle, coming up with a goal which is often quite developmental, this child will do this by, or addressing particularly children who experience disability. Often the wording of the planning cycle and the goal is that they're hoping to change it, work on something that a child's not doing. It's very hard for educators, often mentioned, it's very hard for them to word things that are positive when they are planning for children with challenging behaviour or may or may not have an identified disability. Having a picture of joy as a starting place was a lovely way to begin the planning cycle. So this is what Ella loves doing. Ella loves reaching for rattles, reaching for the shine. There was this moment of joy when she did that. So then how can we use that? I'm using that image. I'm sorry, I talk with my hands and I'm covering up my whole face. How would we use perhaps that picture of joy with some other information that we know about the children, with other observations that we have, information from families, other pictures we may have of them, and then analyze that and start to think about how we can plan with that inciting moment or that provocation being a picture of joy. And so at the moment, I'm co-designing with another educator at a preschool how that planning cycle might actually play out and what it would look like, and will it make the planning cycle one that is more joyful, as it is often one that isn't perceived to be that, and how we can actually make it easier for educators to plan from a strengths-based, joyful perspective, and how do the pictures of joy do that. And I think it's one that would translate when we're looking at supporting student learning in primary schools, when we're looking at behaviour support plans. If we start looking at what's joyful in schools, what's joyful for young people, and how can we weave that into create a different narrative about the children and young people that we're working with, particularly when the narrative is one that is at risk for being deficit and focused on what someone is not doing or not doing yet.
I just have a quick comment, Olivia. It sounds like it's great, because that's exactly what I was thinking when you were talking, the deficit, switching the deficit thing to a strengths-based focus, which is, of course, what early childhood is meant to be about. So just to clarify and go into more, you've really got two strands, because you've got the teachers finding moments of joy in what they do, which is challenging given that they're overloaded often, and in less than ideal environments. But the other one is then encouraging them to tune into the children's joy and to see that as a priority. I'm interested to know, with that aspect of it, did you find that, given this time to just get into the idea of joy and obviously embrace it, as some of these educators seem to have done, that they then thought that started noticing it more in the children and understanding the importance of prioritising it against the sort of current discourse of, learning outcomes and all that?
Yes, and I think that's where they're really... I think there's an inherent struggle in, and I don't want to speak for every early childhood person, and please sing out, because you're here tonight and you spend far more time in early childhood settings than I do. I'm lucky enough to go in with this research. I feel very privileged and want to hang out there more. But it's that we're learning, and I'm learning so much from other educators about what are nice ideas and what's actually quite practical. And the first piece is, as you say, Amanda, getting everyone's head back into joy, to giving us permission. And we have to do that through a staff meeting, through a professional development, to really say, no, joy is important. And we're going to spend some time and make sure that you have joyful encounters in the day. Let's start tracking them. Let's start recognizing them. Let's recognize them in one another. Let's recognize, as well as part of the engaging in joyful conversations, part of that reflection was, what was the barriers to joy? What were some of the things that interrupted joy? And so that we then can say, okay, so how can we adjust and shift and work around that? So much joy occurs through children's play, and so much joy occurs for educators by observing children in play and observing those joyful moments, and then being invited by children to share with them. And so having that time to really sit on that step one, the letter of joy, the engaging in the joyful conversations, they all have to happen first before we start talking about and then taking those pictures off the tree. Well, how could we use where could we use this in planning for the children? They all really loved it. So how could we? Many teachers talked about they were able to reframe their assumptions about the children from what the children were in fact attempting and wanting to do and share, that had been a miscommunication of a behaviour or something that they found very difficult. So that's been quite strong in the research so far. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I can just see so much potential in this. It's very interesting.
Well, it's what was lovely. I mean, just for a moment, one of the centre directors came in to sit with me while we were observing the children, and this little person rushed over and gave her a piece of paper that she'd been drawing on. And you could just see this joy in this relationship between the centre director, who's new, who's getting to know the children, and the children trying to find a way to initiate a social interaction through giving the drawing. And when it was, we walked away later and I said, do you think that's in fact, we started talking about what her intention was, because she's not using spoken language yet and she's 4. So there's all this talk, gosh, I'm, worried about her because she's not talking yet, parents are talking. But there was this communication. She came over and really wanted to engage with you. So then suddenly that focus is then, okay, so she's communicating, not with spoken language yet, but she's communicating and she's sharing and she's social. So how can that joy in giving then be developed further for her? Because she wants to connect, she wants to interact. So that's just one moment that happened the week before last. It's of where we're starting to see and rethink what children are doing from that perspective, that frame. Any questions about that? And please, early childhood people that are here, I'd love to know your thoughts.
There's a question from Ulla in the chat, just wanting a bit more clarification information about what picture constitutes here. Are we talking about photos? Are there drawings and artworks, other things?
Either. Pictures, and yes, that's a great question. Thank you very much for asking it. It is photographs, but it is also children's drawings. So they're the two, and we've had educators draw too, which it has been quite lovely as well. So the drawings are, when I say pictures, they can be pictures, drawings by children, drawings by educators, and photos taken with a phone and then printed out, and pictures are put on the joy tree. So the last approach that I want to share with you is, and I don't know how many of you use puppets, but I don't leave home without them. And puppet caught for joy is very much, and I have a puppet here to share with you. This is Alma. And what is so fascinating to me about Alma was that when I am working with children, often they're children I don't know. I meet them, I go in, I introduce myself. I'm from the University of Sydney. This is my researcher that's coming in with me as well. And we're here to learn about where you feel joy in your day, your preschool. And I invite them, would you be able to help me understand that? One child said to me, oh, the University of Sydney. My dad said, that's the best one. Thank you. So, the children very much understood that hi, Ulla, yes, I love your puppets. Yes, and what Ulla is doing now is exactly what the joy in the puppet is that puppet can express joy so easily and with so much more clarity than us confusing grown-ups can. Just through the movement, a puppet can express what a child is feeling, just like Ulla just did with showing shyness, sadness. And so for me to explore joy, we decided that we would take a puppet into the preschool, and the puppet's name is Joy. But Joy doesn't know very much about who she is yet. So could the children tell her what joy is? So she could get to know a little bit more about joy. And so every child contributed to creating how joy might sound, how joy might talk, what joy might feel like, what joy meant to them. And while it was beautiful for us to get an understanding of the people that brought joy to the children, the places in the preschool where the children experienced joy and wanted to share where they had joy with, and this could again happen in primary school, even in a secondary school, but not, I don't think, with the puppet like Ulla and I are using. I think a self puppet would be a much better fit for young people. And this gets a little bit too Sesame Street, don't you, darling? So it's wanting to make sure that you have a puppet that's not going to scare people. Some grown-ups don't like puppets like this one. So how Ula and I are both handling the puppets is terribly important, that you're not trying to trick the children into thinking the puppet is real. You invite them into that shared belief. And it's their willingness to believe that and how you treat the puppet will either support that willingness or not. And so children are going to be much more willing to talk to me when I have one of my friends along with me. And they will talk to the puppet. I've had children talk in beautiful sentences their parents have, said they will not speak at school. And they weren't. The children were not talking with spoken language at school. They would talk to a puppet. So it's those things that is part of the magic of these beautiful creatures. And in our research, what happened is that the educators could see the puppet and the joy that was bringing to the children, and that had an effect on them. It had an effect on how they felt. They felt joy in seeing these beautiful children who they are with day in, day out, changing their diapers, taking them to the bathroom, doing all the jobs that are not fun in early childhood. They got suddenly to see another side of them and remind them of the joyfulness. They also got to, in some cases, see children say things that they didn't expect, do things that they didn't expect. So they got, through the distance of the puppet and that chance to observe, they were able to develop a more complex appreciation of the joy in the children and feel that joy themselves. So that I'm going to put you down on the floor now. Is that okay? So thank you. So things like that. Bye-bye. So, Ula, thank you. We need to play later. I would like. So they're the approaches that so far have been the ones that have really stood out in this research. I bring in these guidelines for universal design for learning because just so, Kathy and I knew we were on the right track. Nurture, joy, and play is in the new guidelines for universal design for learning. So joy is very important for all teachers who want to teach inclusively. So there is a real power. It's not just a fun, nice thing to have. It's something that is included in these guidelines, which I find very exciting. Because again, we're giving permission for joy. And if your students and children are feeling joy, then chances are you're going to be feeling it a lot more too. So that's just, so it's like those feelings. This is an example of the joy tree. This has been an artist rendition of one of the photographs that we've had, simply because the photos, just in case there was moments of you might have been able to identify a child, and I just don't want to do that for ethics. So I've had an artist recreate some of the sayings that were put up and what this picture looked like, this tree looked like. It was the full size of the hallway. So it took up floor to ceiling. It was huge, and it grew. The first week, there are a couple of little post-it notes and a couple of little pictures, and then it just grew. It became full of joy. And that's something that you can put in an elementary school, in a secondary school, anywhere it can be where people can start documenting moments of joy. Here's where we're thinking about this joy for planning. So I've just put in a picture of the planning cycle and how you start with joy just by observing, and you can move through each of those, that planning cycle phase, but starting with that impetus, that I keep want to say inciting incident, because I keep going back to my storytelling in drama, but it's the provocation. It's that moment of joy that can get us thinking about how we can plan for children's learning and development by starting with joy. So it's joy for planning rather than planning for joy, because I think There's a problem in that. I think from what I'm seeing, joy is much more surprising and unexpected. It creeps up on us in those tiny moments in the day. And this is that's joy. She came to preschools with me. And her ears bring a lot of joy. But any puppet, and if you do decide to use a puppet in your practice, I think the first thing that's important is that you choose one that speaks to you. You will select a puppet that you are going to feel comfortable animating. And by animation, it's either through voice or movement. You don't have to be a puppeteer. If you do know, you don't. Acting training is a wonderful thing, but to use puppets with young children in an authentic way, it's not necessary. It's just being able to know how to position and hold a puppet, and whether or not you decide to give it voice. So simple things like making sure the puppet's sort of icons level with you, and you don't drop your hand because it looks funny when you do that. You want to make sure if you do decide to vocalize a puppet, what's going to be a way that you're going to feel comfortable with, and you don't have to be, ventriloquist. It's your puppet may not use, may not speak. Your puppet may communicate like. Do you want to show everybody how you usually do it? That she usually whispers in my ear. So you can do it that way if you don't want to have a voice, or if you're like Tash and you're feeling really comfortable, you can meow. You can make some sounds, or you can talk like the cat. Whatever you want to do. It's just that you've got to be comfortable. Can I put you down there? So that's the kind of thing. But don't break that disbelief through how you hold the puppet, how you regard it. And they're very simple strategies. And if you want a couple, email me anytime and I can help. I think that's my last slide. No, that's a picture of Joy. I'm going to move my people because I'm blocking Joy. The educators, when we first introduced Joy to the preschool, said, oh, look, 20 minutes. But the children won't sit any longer on the mat. And because I had done my research using puppets with Robin and with Kathy as my supervisors, I knew that they would sit much longer than 20 minutes when a puppet was involved. So we had to, I think after 30, 35 minutes, the joy was disrupted because they had other parts of the day that the preschool needed to do. But these were some of the feedback. I feel like using the puppets can be an instrument in finding joy when talking and playing with the children. I especially feel like puppets can help children find joy and more interest, especially when it comes to difficult parts of the day, such as group times. And that's, again, when you've got those places in the day that are growing places, where you've got children that are not finding those times of the day easy, how can you use those pictures of joy? And by that, I mean sometimes the photographs or experiences such as those with puppetry to make the day more joyful. How can joy be a starting place to create a more supportive learning environment and a more joyful one? And again, this other quote here is one of the educators about the joy they experienced. And I think it's a given that for the most part, educators gain a huge amount of joy from children. And I don't see teachers being given enough recognition for the joy of their work. And so this is a way that we're hoping this research will create a space where joy there is permission for joy, and that it's planned for and allowed for in early childhood and in schools, all schools. And I'll probably get off my soapbox in a second. So yeah, you can choose joy. How are you feeling now? And if you feel really lousy now, pop that in the chat too. I'm just curious to see if joy is contagious.
I think it is contagious, Olivia. I think your joyfulness is contagious.
Oh, Robin, thank you.
Ula, would you like to share something that you've written in the chat about some of, some of your work?
Yes, very joyful. Thank you, Olivia. It was Anne Bamford who pointed me to this webinar, and I'm very thankful for this. Lovely to meet all you joyful people. I am pointing you to a website in Denmark, which has 22 researchers following a lot of kindergartens in Denmark with a new sort of pedagogical method called play art, where we have artists coming for 3 months into the kindergartens, working with the kids and the day miners and pedagogues and the leaders in order to change the daily routines into a more playful and joyful and curious way of being with children in the daily life. I hope you will join our website. You can just tickle on for an English version. Not all the research will be in English, but very much inspiring, I hope, for you too in Australia.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
It's very relevant to not only Olivia's Joy project, but also to a project that we're doing called 1, 2, 3 Play.
Yes.
So it's wonderful to hear about this, and we'll definitely be going on to have a look at the website. Thank you.
Can I just, Olivia, absolutely beautiful project. Really, really, really vital and going into these centers, and I myself am always one of my major concerns is always, how do I kind of pour the love in a little bit,
Yeah.
and where are some spaces where it'll make sense, and how can I do it so that it's not just another thing for the teachers to do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And this was really lovely, the way it moved in, and it created connections between kind of valuing the teachers and helping them connect that directly to the children's moments, which is really lovely and somewhat effortless. I think there was a lightness about it that was really lovely.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's the biggest thing, is that you don't want to create it to become another, oh, I've got to tick a joy box now. It's just, that's not what you want to have happen. You want it to be something that is going to add and enrich and recognize the place where many of our educators are at the moment too.
I was going to ask what the feedback was from the educators from the project, and
what sort of feedback? Like, do they like it?
Yeah, basically. And did it bring them joy?
Dude, that's a nice thing.
How did they
some of it instead? I wouldn't say no, sorry. No, so far it's been lovely for Kathy and I to see that this is actually bringing joy. And people, and sometimes educators at the beginning, like some of the first surveys, sorry, there is no joy. I don't know why we're talking about it, because I'm just too tired, there isn't any. And then that same educator at 7 weeks or 8 weeks later said, I'm really starting to see and feel joy from families in a way that I just didn't used to. And I'm really starting to see joys, with my colleagues. The piece about creating those joyful conversations, I think, with each other, because if you're really busy, you don't have the time to say, Tash, thank you so much for wiping that table down. Thank you so much for that. That was a fabulous story that you brought in. So yeah, it's that.
And it must have good implications for well-being and stuff like that.
That's where we're
when you're burnt out of just
Well, that's a big thing for all teachers, is that their well-being isn't fabulous. And we know why, because sometimes where they're working isn't joyful, and we don't give permission for that. how often do we have time to give permission and to, you know, say that to each other without feeling like we're saying something light that we didn't mean, or that you're just being phony. Do you know that it's actually got a bit of, and that's why your feedback was really helpful, Georgia, because it's got it means something. It's not just all rainbows and unicorns, as my 12-year-old daughter would tell me.
Well, we have some lovely other comments here, Olivia. Ursula says, really love the puppet.
Oh,
For a delightful, joyful session. Anna is now feeling lively.
oh, good. I'm glad.
Amanda is thanking Ula as well for the
Yeah.
lovely work. Even though Katrina's feeling depleted, she is inspired to see the joy.
Good. Well, I'm glad. That was my aim, was that folks would leave tonight feeling a little more joyful. Kathy has arrived. Hello. This is a project that we share. So I really I'd love for you to take a minute to share some of your thoughts.
And I'm sorry I'm so late. We had a big day at work today and I've just arrived home. But I could not miss this session with Olivia. I can't take credit for this. This is Olivia being who she is. And I think for me particularly, it's that sense of authenticity as a researcher and modelling for our early childhood educators what it means to give yourself permission for joy, to create space for joy in the work that we do. And just, I suppose, validating that joy is one of those things that makes the world go round, and it's something that it's so easy to lose sight of. And we want to bring that back. We want our children to see us as adults living joy, and that the world is hard and it's challenging, but there are still always moments of delight, and encouraging our educators to look for those and share those with children and with families. And it has to be a good thing. I know it brings us so much joy to look at this. The conversations we have, they're funny, they're delightful, but they're also very real. And it validates our children, it validates our colleagues, and it brings me such joy to have meetings with Olivia and to be doing this work with her and to be hearing her talk about this. And I thank you all for your comments, and we hope that we can continue this work in many, many ways and many facets. So thank you, Olivia, for all you do. You bring me joy. You are my joy, and I can't thank you enough.
You're going to make me cry. So, no, this is very much a joint, joyful project. Don't let Kathy fool you. It is very much both of us working on this. Though I have not seen you with a puppet. That I must do.
Thank you for that, Kathy.
Yeah.
I think just looking at the comments, everyone, you have brought everyone joy tonight, and you have inspired everyone to choose joy. I think that concept of choosing joy is really important for all of us, wherever we're working and whoever we're working with. Tanya also says thank you for the joy, and Zhangyi is sharing this tonight with a 1-year-old and how much joy that brings, and said thanks for sharing the puppet and the non-verbal ways of communication. And Anne is telling us about Franklin's naughtiness, but I'm sure that brings you joy as well, Anne. Well, I guess that brings us to a close tonight. Olivia, thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you everyone for coming. You brought me joy, tremendous joy. So Thank you for sharing your evening with me. And thank you, Robin, for the invitation. It was lovely.
Pleasure. Good night, everyone, and we'll see you again soon, hopefully.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Night.